Anytime, Chief.
You're now recording.
Beautiful. Good morning. Everybody ready to go home? Looks like it's about time, isn't it? Last talk of the day. Anyway, my name is Tim Sayre, Canal IT Security. My talk is called The Lemonade Pomegranate. I don't know why. Basics of Security in a Digital World. It's just about basic digital security type stuff. More geared toward businesses than individuals, because everybody knows, especially the crowd here, you should all know about your passwords and how not to use dictionary words and two-factor authentication, all that good stuff. But a lot of people don't know things about business particulars. I'm Chief of Operations at Canal IT Security. I've been a Special Forces unit for 6 years, 3 years as a combat engineer. Got a lot of military experience, and that's where I basically draw most of my experience for security. When I got into the Guard, it was in, I think it was 1998, and I'd been involved in computers since I was probably 13, 14 years old. And I lost my password one time, and the guy, Steve Fish, came down and had a disk to crack a password. And I said, "You got to give me a copy of that disk." And he's like, "No, I'm not allowed to. I got to figure out how to do that." So here I am. Now I can do that. I have a very diverse range of skills that actually assist me a lot. I've worked at a car wash. I drove a truck for 5 years. Security guard at a mine for about 6 months, and worked at any kind of factory you could think of. Overhead crane operator, steel mill. Worked at a textile mill in North Carolina. All over the place. Got 3 children, 3 grandchildren. Been a hacker since 1978. The reason I say that is because that was the first time that I can actually remember taking apart an old transistor radio. I put it back together, and it worked. I actually made an adjustment. I don't know what I did to it, but it still worked when I got it. Most of the time before then, I take things apart and look at them and throw them away. You see a lot of scams on the internet now. It seems like spear phishing is one of the big ways that you get people. Stuff like this. It could really happen. I mean, I don't know. I probably wouldn't put anything in there, but somebody would. Why should you listen to me? Don't. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody, really. I mean, most people don't know what they're talking about. When they do talk, it's all talk. I've seen a lot of mistakes made. A lot of those big hacks you talk about, like the Target breach, Chase, all those things happened because people weren't doing the proper jobs. I mean, they knew how to do it. They have IT guys. They pay a lot of money that are supposed to know what they're doing, but yet they didn't for whatever reason. Most of the time, I would see the things that I've read, not that they're full disclosure, the whole thing, but most of the things I've heard about is people just being lazy, not having good passwords, no two-factor authentication, no monitoring of the lateral inside your network, silly stuff like that, mistakes that shouldn't be made. We try to use industry standards. I mean, I don't make this stuff up. I get it from listening to talks like this on the internet, reading a lot of information. I try to change things around and adapt them to the business needs. I'm very passionate about security. As a matter of fact, when I started at ITT Tech, where I got a degree in networking, which probably don't mean anything to anybody, but it taught me a lot of stuff. My first recollection of the security class, Jeff Nestor taught the security class. I'll never forget this guy. By the time that class was over with, first night, I said, that's what I want to do. It just, the way he described everything and the things that needed to be done, it made sense to me. I think that was my favorite class out of the whole degree. Our company is community driven. We're not driven by greed. I mean, don't get me wrong. We're not doing things for free most of the time. When I say community driven, like the talk I'll be giving tomorrow is we pulled security at Top of Rock, the place here in Charleston that was being beset by vandals, and we volunteered to go provide security, try to catch some of these vandals and stop them. And there's another project we're getting involved with, North Charleston Community Center. They called and wanted to put a computer lab together, see if I had some time. I said, sure, I love helping out. So we've taken volunteers, taken equipment and everything, and basically putting together the computer lab for the kids for after school. I'm convinced we can do better. I mean, there is no reason that you should see a multi-million-dollar company that got breached. I mean, granted, you can't keep a hacker out. But what you can do is you can stop a hacker from stealing your data, for the most part. You might not get all of it, but you should be able to stop most of it. I mean, like Sony, they lost how many gigs of information coming out of their network, new movies and stuff that should not be released and nobody should have access to, but yet, if I'm not mistaken, I think that came about, either North Korea did it, which someone said, or what I'm more likely to believe, disgruntled employees. How can you stop that? Well, you got to trust the people you're working for, or you people you have working for you. And this right here describes a lot of things pretty accurately, the state of affairs that we have going now. Actually, doing security is pretty good, the best offense. You know how to do it. I mean, people like yourselves, most of you security professionals, you know what to do. You know what not to do. All you've got to do is just put it into action. It sometimes takes a little finesse to put it into words that a CEO could appreciate. It's hard to describe sometimes how they're going to get a return on investment. I could stand here all day long and say, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, I can install this pretty black box and these blinking lights will do everything, but will they stop somebody? Well, for the most part they will, until you get that one employee that clicks on a link in an email that I sent. How are you going to defend against that? It was really hard for me to develop a business plan that I could convince somebody to pay me money for something when I couldn't do a complete job. How am I going to get you to pay me monthly to take care of your computer network when I can't? I can tell you honestly, I can't keep everybody out all the time. It took me a lot to figure out that you just got to do security sometimes. And you've got either the existing infrastructure or your new infrastructure. That's the only way it comes. I mean, you've either got a business that's been doing business, that's got a network, or you're moving into a new place or just starting out and you need a network. With existing infrastructure, one of the main things you want to start, you want to document everything, inventory what you've got, and test everything that you've got. Maybe you've got stuff that's 10 years old that's still working just fine, or maybe you've got stuff that's 2 years old that's misconfigured and it's going to let somebody right in. It's stuff you got to figure out. You got to go in and look at what you've got, document, document, document. It's one of the worst habits that I have is not writing down immediately what I'm doing, and I got to go back and try to keep log of it. Still learning. You got to determine if you need to actually replace any of your hardware. You should be able to get by with replacing only what's necessary, but how do you know what's necessary to replace? You don't know if it's working. Is it working? Is it keeping accurate logs? Maybe it is. Are the logs being monitored by somebody? And that brings us to the baseline. You've always got to establish a baseline before you go out and tell what's going on. How do you know when somebody's trying to exfil data out of your network if you don't know what's normally supposed to be leaving your network? Sometimes it's hard to do if you've already got an existing infrastructure, because you could have been infected with malware, or you could have a hacker that's been inside your network for 6 months, a year, even longer. If you have that when you establish your baseline, then you're probably not going to pick up on some of the things. But not all the time. I mean, it all depends on individual situations. You've got to review your controls, like, for example, if your company doesn't do business with anyone outside the country, then one of your controls would probably be to block any data leaving your company going to a foreign country. That's the first place I would start, but there's always a lot more detail you can go into. Since this is just a basic talk, and I'm not super experienced in the field, then I'm not going to try to go into any deeper detail. You want to have review your computer use policy. Maybe you don't even have one. A lot of companies nowadays have some sort of a policy. May not be all-encompassing, may be just as simple as don't use a computer for personal use, don't get on Facebook on company time. If you've only got 4 or 5 employees, a couple of computers, you don't really do a lot, maybe that's all you need. Maybe you got 250 employees and people are spending all day browsing Facebook rather than doing their work. In that case, you got to tighten up a little bit. And document, document, document. Very important. With your new infrastructure, first thing you want to try is you want to research. You want to make sure everything works like you think it's going to. Check your compatibility. Like maybe you've got a firewall that doesn't necessarily work with the router you're using. I don't know of any that don't, but it could be. That's what the research is all about. Once again, you establish a baseline. In a case like this, it's always easier when you're coming in fresh. You don't have anything there to establish your baseline. You'll want to monitor at least a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks. Average things out. You want to see if you get any ups and downs. Maybe it's spikes on Monday morning. Maybe spikes are on Friday afternoon. Maybe those spikes are nothing. Maybe those spikes are somebody trying to do something bad. And what's the good of having a log if you're not going to monitor? That's another thing that I've read a lot of stuff about. People will have some of the best logging, some of the best equipment out there, but if it's misconfigured, if it's sending the logs to the wrong place, if it's not logging what you need, maybe it's logging too much, and you got too much information, no way possible that you could go through that same amount of information. What are you going to do then? You got to have some sort of a way to pick and choose and figure things out to make the job easier. You want to lock down as much as possible, and this is a big one on me. When I first started, I was draconian in my efforts. I would say you can't have anything, you can't bring any outside devices in, no social networking, log this, log that. But I found that a lot of that is a hindrance, and not only will people find a way around it, which is bad, but it trains them to sort of look for ways around, look for easier way to do something. And that's even worse, because if they get in the habit of finding a way around something, you might be able to stop that if you pay attention and you adjust as necessary. But if you get someone in the habit of not paying attention to anything, then you've just lost. It's like pop-up warnings. You've all seen them when your security sites or security certificate's invalid. Click OK to continue or no. If you get too many of those, people are going to just start getting in the habit of click OK, click, 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 click through, go. Once you get in that habit, then you're going to have a lot harder time to get it back. Realistic training it's more important than the checking your blocks, because a lot of times I've seen a lot of companies I've worked for that have the security training. They'll go through and they'll stick you on the module, and you go through and you read, you watch a couple of videos, and you answer some questions. That's good because it will expose you to what you're supposed to look for and give you the information. But at the same time, if that's the only thing you do and you can simply rely on that, then you might as well not even do anything at all, because that's not going to be a real-world example. And if you don't have a real-world example, then you're not really training anybody to do anything. You want to establish and follow a security policy. The big thing here is to follow the policy. And if you're going to follow the policy, you've got to have buy-in from the C-level executives all the way down. Because if the people who are actually at the call center, they might be doing this and they might be doing everything just like they're supposed to, but if they see the managers over there breaking the policies, then even if they don't say anything, that's going to put in their head, hey, if he's not doing it, why should I? Why should I be inconvenienced and not do this when he's getting away with doing it? It's the same thing with pretty much anything you want to do. The employees are going to take their lead off of your actions, not off of your policies. I'm sure most of you are probably aware of that. And again, document, document, document. Training. The reason I put this picture up here, besides I just think it's a cool picture, is the training has to be geared toward the people that you have working for you. I mean, you're not going to train somebody who is possibly an older generation. I hate to pick on older people because some of them are really sharp on technology, but you're not going to train an older person who doesn't have any experience at all on a computer the same as a young 20-year-old kid who grew up with computers, who lives and breathes technology. You're going to have to adapt and make your training fit. And part of this is part of your training. Would you let this guy, dressed like this, into your financial institution? Anybody? Like, say you ran a bank, or let's say, not to mention any names, Northwestern Mutual, and you had a job in there, say, to go swap out a hard drive on a computer. Would you leave that guy alone with your computer? You shouldn't, but it happened. One of the guys that worked for me, Harold back there, he was with me. He was the one that was dressed up. My name on the work order, that's me. We got in there, they didn't ask for ID. We told them we're here to swap out the hard drive. Cool. While Harold's doing the work, I'm talking to the girl that has her computer being worked on, and not only did I find out that that computer was being worked on today, her boss had a hard drive that needed swapped on his computer, got it on the same shipment. I'll probably get a work order to come back for it next week. I wish I had the picture that Harold actually put a Raspberry Pi with a short Ethernet connection. She left us alone for 5 minutes, walked away, don't know where she went to. So behind the docking station, we set this Raspberry Pi, didn't plug anything in, took a picture of it where it could have been plugged straight in to the network. We could have put her computer back on the disk. Everything's fine. We're logging all of her keystrokes and everything, gathering every bit of information. And through the extra information that I gathered, I could have went back without a work order or with a fake work order 2 days later, fix her boss's computer, made some excuse to sneak my way in there, grab that Raspberry Pi off of there, wait a week, 2 weeks, and then boom, I got the keys to the kingdom. I have all the information I need to go through and blow millions of dollars worth of financial data. They would have never known how it would have got done. They would have been like, oh, North Korea or China or Russia. But in reality, it was their slack attitude towards security which would have allowed this. And I wanted to point this out, once again, not to mention any names. Secure online banking login. You would think it would be secure, first of all, because they automatically make you answer a security question every time you log in. However, with a maximum of a 10-character password, how secure are you? I read not very long ago, if I'm not mistaken, that there was a cluster that cracked every Microsoft password in about 6 or 18 hours. And that goes up to however many characters they are. I'm sure it wouldn't take long with a botnet to crack a 10-character password. And with a little bit of social engineering to go with it, you could have probably gathered any of those security questions that I would have answered. If you actually use security questions. I mean, as you can see, piss off. That's not really the name of any college roommates that I know of, but it works. And another one, logging into a certain school's website, not to mention any names, University of Charleston. I'm pretty sure that when you have an error like that, you'll want to hide it. You're not going to want to let me see the error. That's like turn debugging off. Come on. Isn't that like 101? I'm not a programmer. I'm not a web developer. But I know that when I'm putting the website live, I'm going to turn the debugging off. I'm not going to let people know. It gives way too much information. But they tried. Maybe. And another one. Place I worked at. Had a job. I walked into the closet, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was for Aetna, downtown Charleston. I walk up, and there's their closet, propped open with a broom, laying on the floor. You can't see it. I didn't take the picture a long way. But probably not supposed to do that. Just saying. And another one. Notice the fancy key card lock being propped open, but security. I don't know. Doesn't look like security to me, but hey, I'm just saying. Had to get the babies and grandbabies in there. Sorry about that. But now, I'm actually trying to rush this a little bit for time, but I do have to talk about some of the things that we could do as security professionals to make it better. We need to actually be able to communicate to the C-level executives. I don't know that we're not doing that, but it seems to me that we're just missing a bunch of opportunities because a lot of the basics just aren't being covered. And I don't know that it's because people don't have time, but how hard is it to use a password manager and a long password with two-factor authentication rather than, say, for example, if you were the office manager at an orthodontist office in Hurricane, West Virginia, and your password was braces. Come on. First of all, the job that I went to with that, I was called in to work on his computer, the office manager. He wasn't there. So I'm called up the help desk. I'm thinking, okay, cool, he's not here. I'm not going to be able to log on and do the work. I'll have to come back later. Well, not only did the help desk guy know what his password usually was, which is a big no-no, braces, come on. If you can't get any more original than that, then I don't think you're really trying. And that comes back to the, we need to try. Another time, I can remember not too long ago, walking into Chase Bank, not to mention any names, but they had a power outage. I walk in. This one wasn't so bad because I walked in. I mean, granted, I'm not dressed properly, but they didn't check my ID, didn't ask me who I was, didn't even ask for me to see the work order. I said, hey, I got to come in and try to fix your power or try to fix your server. And the guy's like, oh, you're coming in again. It goes off every couple of months. It goes off, and they know there's nothing they can do. It was a building that was on three-phase power. The third phase went to the rack. Half of the building had power. The other half didn't. There's nothing you can do with it, but it just irks me sometimes. And I walk into these places, and I can get away with some of this stuff just by walking in. I mean, this is a bank. This is a bank where I keep my money. I actually have an account at Chase Bank. Ask me for an ID before you let me over to your server rack, because if you don't know who I am, you don't know what I'm going to plug in there. And it's just little things like that. And I think I'm running a little short on time, or a little soon on time. Any questions? Oh yeah, Pizza Hut. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean. Yeah. I walk into Pizza Hut, I've got a work order. I'm calling in on the phone to people at the door, and she's standing at the door. She said, you got a badge? And I said, matter of fact, I do. It's on the work order. I didn't print it out because they sent me a badge. It was a paper copy badge. You cut it out with a pair of scissors and paste a picture on top of it. It doesn't really do a lot, but I had it, and I showed it to her. She was like, good. And I told her, I said, yeah, anyone could have done. That's why I didn't print it out. But yeah, she did a real good job because she asked for my ID. She wanted to make sure I had the badge, that I was who I said I was. It's not rocket science, guys. It's computer science. We all know that. It's not hard to take what you're supposed to do and do what you know is right. How are we going to fix it? I don't know, but I'm working on it. Any question? Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.